Hey demons, it's your girl Lucy, and as many of you know, I'm working on a pilot for a web series that I'm creating, but that takes a while, and I have lots of OCs and stories and stuff that I would like to get out into the world that aren't necessarily even going to be a big part of the web series, but I still consider them in the world. So I figured, how can I show that without having to have them animate a whole separate thing for them, which would take forever. Well, I like writing, so I decided that I might write some short stories of characters that also exist in this world that I'm creating, but aren't necessarily going to be a main focus or, actually be in the story. So I just thought that would be fun. Another way to share my creations. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I wrote a short story to read to you guys. She sat watching as other teens chattered, smiling into the soft sunlight as they enjoyed their lunch. She could just make out their figures from cracks in the branches of her secluded hideout. A heavily shaded area overlooking the calm waters of the lake, surrounded by protective thorn bushes and tight trees. It was calm, hidden away from all the bright lights and excessive talking of the school. She swore the walls hummed in a sound only she could hear, overwhelming her senses until she wanted to do nothing more than crawl into a closet and stay there until Miss Dewberry coaxed her out. People were a lot. She had learned that people thought she was a lot too, so at least the feeling was mutual. Something about her being able to walk through their deepest, subconscious thoughts as they slept unnerved them. She never quite understood why. It's not like she cared what they kept secret. As the quiet rumble of students' voices began to fade, she knew it was time to start heading inside. The last thing she needed was some overzealous pixies swarming her about being late for class. The rest of the day floated by, glimpses of classes occasionally slipping through her thoughts. She was generally better at tuning out their droning during a lecture, but as for more physical, or as others would say, exciting classes, she watched from the back like a ghost, perfectly invisible to the outside world. She watched with wide eyes as the sun finally set behind the stars, giving the moon its long-awaited chance to glow. The darkness made her feel alive. It was calm, and quietly wonderful in a way the loudness of the day could never be. Now she could be at peace. Now she could sleep. She curled up on her nest of pillows and blankets, waiting until her breathing slowed and thoughts quieted, for a magic to drag her from the physical world and into a half-real fantasy. When she opened her eyes, she felt lighter. Her soul seamlessly separated from her mortal shell as she stepped weightlessly onto the stone floors. The hallways looked normal at a first glance, dark and empty as one would expect. But as she walked further through the twisting corridors, she could see it was anything but. Through the air glided thousands of shimmering droplets, twisting around her figure as she walked like running water. They merged into larger bubbles, rivers, crashed into waterfalls. They were memories, emotions, experiences big and small twisting together into a new world that someone may only enter in their most vulnerable. When even the dullest minds manage to spin their thoughts into creative masterpieces, just to be forgotten by the time they wake, forcing themselves into a physical cage as they yearn for something they can't even remember. She relished in the silence, in the feeling of connection she had with herself. It was magnificent. Gently she reached out her hand to ever so carefully cup a pool of water in her palms. Peering inside, she saw a boy that looked familiar. It was Oliver, a boy who sat in front of her in her Fundamentals of Magic class. She had always seen him as a teacher's pet, or at least someone who spent far too much time correcting people. But here he looked younger, his serious expression gone, replaced with the wide, gap-toothed grin of a young child as he lied muddy and exhausted at the bottom of a hill, staring at clouds that really did turn into the shapes he saw in them. She had a soft smile as she let the water float back into the air, not wanting to disturb him. He seemed like he needed this. Turning into the library, she was greeted with waterfalls like she had never seen before, splashing onto the expansive books and streaming down their pages. Taking a closer look, she could see Kaylee, riding a dragon's back with fire in her eyes as she chased down their ancient societies professor. While she found that class quite interesting, she could understand Kaylee's distaste for it. She seemed to be enjoying herself, having the heroic adventure she had always longed for, even if it was just so they would have less homework. She moved swiftly along, figuring that she would check back on how she was doing later. Walking along, glancing into people's dreams, a girl wandering through a surreal version of her childhood home, a boy who was falling through an endless sky, an elf sitting at a table with a high council, and even a sleepwalker who was seeing reality through a distorted lens. All normal, Now she figured she would find a peaceful dream to reside in until she was forced to wake. That's when she felt a sudden chill run down her spine, and she froze. Shit. Low growls sounded from behind her as if they were saying, "I'm right behind you, aren't I?" Followed by cackling laughter. She whipped her head around to face a creature made of shadows, its body swirling and changing even as it stood still. Two red slit eyes staring down at her. A nightmare. Before she even had the chance to fully register that it was there, it shifted into a spider, scurrying across the floor toward a pond. "Hey!" she exclaimed, lunging forward trying to grab the thing, only for it to phase through her hands and appear even closer to the water than before. Now on her hands and knees she was desperately trying to capture it, but she was too late. The second its nasty shadows touched the clear reservoir, black ink began to overtake it, turning the dream so black that she couldn't even see her own reflection. Damn it. She was usually so good at catching them before this could happen. How could this have caught her off guard? She hadn't seen a nightmare around in months. Taking a deep breath, she plunged into the now black water, gasping at the sudden cold as she plunged deeper and deeper, the sparkling light of the surface quickly fading from her vision. If she could finish off this monster quickly, it wouldn't have time to multiply or spread to other dreams, and she could get back to enjoying her one place where no one would bother her. She was surprised the ground came so quickly, landing on cool dirt that cushioned her fall. Her surroundings were dark, an endless expanse of trees, their leaves blotting out the light of the stars. It was completely still, no movement, no sounds. Usually she would find that comforting, but this was a different type of silence. The kind of silence that felt so loud it was suffocating, like you might never hear a noise again. Even so, she stayed alert, conjuring a sword made of pure magic that illuminated the woods around her. This nightmare was not going to surprise her again. She took a step forward. She needed to find out whose dream this was. That was who the nightmare would be attracted to. Finding them meant finding it. It wasn't until she went to take another step that she felt how heavy her feet had become. Long vines had wrapped their greedy tendrils around her ankles, making every step feel like dragging her feet out of quicksand. Glaring down at them, she swung her sword, cutting through the plants like butter. But the freedom only lasted a second, as they quickly sprang back to life, grabbing her tighter than before and further up her leg. She didn't have time for this. She cut them down again and again, but every time it only made them grab tighter, wrapping around her shoulders, weighing her down to the forest floor. On her knees, the vines reached her shoulders, her face, covering her eyes and mouth, suffocating her as she fought for air. No, it couldn't end here. If she died now, she would never reach the real world again. That thought terrified her for some reason. It's not like blinding sunlight and screeching birds is what she yearned for, but she wondered if she never woke up, who would care? She had no friends, no family, not even a pet that would curl up beside her and await for her to open her eyes much more. She would be gone, and reality would move on without a second glance. She had always thought she was okay with that, but now, as the weight of her meaningless life crashed down on her, she felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't want to have spent her whole life watching other people live. She didn't want to be a background character in her own life. She didn't want to be a ghost. Her being a ghost was about to be much more than a metaphor if she didn't do something. With a sudden jerk, she was able to free one of her hands. She had one shot. She couldn't fail. Twisting her wrist and getting into position, her hand poised for the vine to return. It came fast. The second she felt it trying to latch onto her tighter, she grabbed it, squeezed it between her fingers, refusing to let go, even as it shifted and squirmed. She was in a dream. She was in a world made of entirely magic, a fantasy, one where she could do whatever she desired. Knowing this, she began to pulse with magic, overpowering the nightmare's infection in this small plant, wrapping it in light until it felt warm in her palm. With another strong pull, the vine completely uprooted, now swinging above her with a dazzling glow. Still unable to see, she relied on her sense of what was around her. Every living thing was connected through magic, and in the silence of the forest she could hear its soft hum radiating from things around. Listening carefully, she managed to pinpoint a sturdy branch in a tree not far from here. Vines had already begun trying to drag her down further. She had to make this. Using all of her strength, she yanked her arm out of the already growing tendrils, sending one side of the rope flying through the air as she felt it hit and wrap curly around a branch. Yes! With One final tug, the rope stretched and recoiled like an elastic, sending her flying out of the sea of thorns and into the safety of the trees. Looking down, she saw an average forest floor, with the occasional tuft of grass and patches of flowers, as if she hadn't been suffocating a moment before. Things were strange in dreams. She never knew what to make of them. I'm trying. Just slow down. A girl's voice echoed through the darkness. That must be whose dream this is. Heart pounding in her chest, she started racing towards the noise, leaping from tree to tree. She wasn't trusting the ground again, no matter how normal it looked. Come on, Susie went to the city to get the apples from the dragon masquerade. Another voice spoke rapidly. What? The same girl's voice as before answered, sounding more confused. Haven't you ever heard of seashells before? Yes. What is she even saying? It's like she comes from a different planet. Don't you understand anything? The voice sounded crueler now, giggling like people do when they're trying to hide the fact that they're laughing, but not doing so well. During the battle between one nation that existed millions of years ago and another, some things happened that had a small effect on the quills we use today. A man's voice started droning on, sounding distinctly like their ancient society's professor. Gods, everyone really does hate that class. Just as he was jumping from one branch to another, there was a siren that began blaring loud enough to shake the trees and send her crashing to the ground. The vines began to slither towards her. Don't you dare, she said in one of the firmest voices she had ever heard herself use, and to her surprise they backed off. This one city was destroyed, but it's okay because there were some other guys that came and rebuilt. He continued lecturing, but the ear-piercing noise was so distracting that she could barely comprehend what he was saying. Can you repeat that? The girl's quiet voice piped up again, sounding closer this time. Were you not paying attention? No, I was. It's just the noise. Don't make up excuses. Pay attention and you wouldn't be falling behind. It's too loud. She was barely able to hear her this time, her voice having gotten quieter, nearly completely drowned out by the sound of kids whispering to each other, desks squeaking as they were shifted, pens scratched against paper, somebody chewing gum. It all accumulated into noise that was so loud she had to double over and cover her ears. Ahead of her now, she was able to see a spot in the forest floor where a blinding light was shining. As she forced herself to get closer, she saw a small girl curled on the ground, twisted in ever-growing vines, with her eyes shut tight and hands over her ears. The man had stopped lecturing now, and it was replaced with the sound of kids talking again. This time a large group of them, jumping between conversation topics that made no sense, and moved so fast she couldn't keep up. It was also overwhelming. She already had to deal with this in the physical world. She couldn't imagine having it in her dreams, too. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, she began walking towards the girl. She stopped a few feet away from her and sat down. Everything seems to be a bit too loud here, doesn't it? The girl only whimpered in response. The world seems to move so fast sometimes. People speak a language that you're the only one who can't understand, no matter how hard you try. You could be screaming and no sound will come out. It gets frustrating, she admitted, speaking in a soothing voice. She gave the girl a soft smile when she opened her eyes to look at her. What's your name? Ira, she answered, voice barely a whisper. That's pretty. Could you do me a favor, Ira, and make the noise go away? I was quite enjoying the forest before it started. Forest? Her eyes widened as she sat up a bit, looking around for the first time. I love forests. Her mouth twitched in the beginning of a smile before her face fell again. I can't make them go away. I can never keep up with them. I'm always so far behind. I can't change anything. I can't even do the basic stuff right. I don't know why I'm in this school. She stared at Ira with an unreadable expression, her blue eyes deep in thought. Well, that's the fun of a dream. You can change anything. You just have to realize you can first. A dream? This is a dream? The realization dawned on her, her voice sounding above all of the racket. Well, then I want it to be quiet, she said. Her voice still quivered, but it had a new conviction to it. Everything went quiet. Ira pushed herself up from the ground, the vine sliding off her as the thorns opened to reveal blooming moonflowers. This was the first time she realized the flowers were blooming all around, bathing the forest in their soft blue light. Above her the trees swayed softly in the breeze, and their leaves parted to reveal thousands of stars that were now glimmering overhead. She supposed they always were. She just wasn't able to see them. Thank you, Ira whispered. For what? You did this yourself. That made her smile. The two girls sat next to each other for a long moment, appreciating the beauty all around them. The stillness, the tranquility that people never seemed to have time for when they were awake. What happens when I wake up? She must have noticed the confusion on her face because she continued. I mean, this is great and all, but I can't exactly do this in real life. This is all fake. When I wake up, nothing will be different. I might not even remember this ever happened. She trailed off, her voice getting quieter as she spoke. I think that's up to you. I haven't really been doing great either. Being accepted here, being chosen as one of the best, felt wrong. I guess I never really considered that it was possible before. But now here I am, expected to fit in with the world's greatest heroes, and still hiding from people I recognize in public. She laughed softly, turning her gaze to Ira. But I keep going. And some things I experienced tonight made me realize that I might be capable of more than I thought. I don't think I'll ever stop enjoying the silence, or be loud like the other kids, but that doesn't mean that I can't change things. Hell, I've spent countless nights saving idiots from being killed by their own dreams. Who's to say I can't transfer a bit of that tenacity to the real world? Ira smiled wider. I bet you could. If only all those wannabe heroes knew how badass of a role model was sitting right in front of them. Some things are better kept secret. But if I'm being honest, I've always wanted to rub it in Sorsha's face. She needs somebody to humble her. At that, they both burst into giggles, and she felt the weight of her loneliness slipping off her shoulders with every passing second. It's really nice to have a friend who understands. Maybe together we'll manage to get through it all a little easier. A friend. Ira had called her her friend. She had always wondered what having one of those would be like. It made her feel all warm inside, and like she couldn't stop smiling. She finally had a friend, one that would last outside of her dreams. So that was the story I had for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll probably be coming out with more of these in the future, just like experimenting with a bunch of different types of stories and kind of expanding the world, because there are places that I have developed for the story that I won't get a chance to actually, you know, go to in the web series. So I figured, why not, explore them here, and the characters that won't be as important, but I still care about. So I want other people to care about. Also, I put an Amazing Digital Circus reference in this story, so if anybody noticed it, comment down below, because I love the Amazing Digital Circus, so I threw that in there. So anyway, thanks for watching. Bye, guys!